I'm going to take a quick look at this kind of obscure little find on eBay. This is a Portwell Medweb. It seems they have a whole line of these. There's something for the medical industry. I'm not sure what they're. I think they're like VPNs for the medical industry. This particular model is the NAD-2053-311. There's a whole bunch of other ones, all the way up to like 2U or maybe even 4U rack units. But they have various models, even like weird funky desktop boxes and stuff. This one has a nice crystal fonts display on the front. CF card slot. There's no CF card in it. It didn't ship with one. The unit is actually powered by a hard drive, so I guess this is just optional, maybe for firmware updates or something. I'm not sure. It has a nice series of LEDs on the front for the 3 WAN ports, or LAN ports. Around back, we've got IEC mains input. Nice little flip cover power switch, which I love. These are always cool. VGA out. 300 base T Ethernet ports. A serial port for the console. Factory default button. I don't know if that's actually supported in anything other than their operating system. 2 USB ports and a 40mm fan, which is fairly loud. Although 1U in height, it's not actually wide enough for a rack. Mine happened to come with the appropriate rack ears to extend it to the full width. On the inside, there's an exposed power supply, which I hate. Although they did do it right, all the input lines are nicely covered. There's a shake-proof washer on the ground lug. You know, they did it right, but I prefer an actual power supply unit that's all in one. It's a decent power supply. You know, they use Nichicon caps and whatnot. The motherboard itself it appears to be a custom layout, although I think VIA actually does call this something. It's not a mini ITX, it's something else. This is a VIA motherboard. It uses the C3 processor, runs at 533 megahertz. This particular one came with half a gig of RAM. It's PC133, so obviously not a processing powerhouse. Although I did manage to do some tests on this thing, and it was easily able to saturate my 20 megabit internet connection. So, you know, as long as you don't run anything fancy on it, you can use this as a router if you want. It will work pretty well. The only limitation is the RAM. I'm not sure how much you can actually put in here. It may be limited to like 1 gig or something, and that would be a pain. pfSense, especially if you're going to be using fancy stuff like antivirus and whatnot, it'll use up quite a bit of memory. I know my router uses about a gig, and that's used, so there's only 50% free on my particular router. I have 2 gigs installed. There's a 40 gig Samsung 2.5 inch parallel ATA drive. This drive is actually broken. Hard drive clicks and doesn't work properly. I was able to recover files from it and figure out what it is. This thing runs Red Hat 9, and the files say, "Oh, look, it's from a hospital in Nevada." So, not sure if that's of any use to anyone. It certainly isn't to me. There's a standard CF card slot adapter. The power supply feeds power into an actual splitter cable that's hidden under here. One goes here to the power of this board for the CF card, and the other one runs off, and I think it's powering it. I think it's actually hooked up to the drive cable in some weird way. I don't know. It's kind of strange. And you've got the various cables for the front display here. And there's a serial cable going over to the display. Sorry, I should say that these go to the LEDs, not the display. Although a little odd, this unit does actually have onboard video. The thing is, it comes out through a header, and they've got a VGA cable just running to a socket at the back. You can see on the motherboard that there's actually space for 2 more Ethernet ports along with 2 more Ethernet controllers. They've got these Realtek, I think, Realtek Ethernet controllers on it. The power supply area of the motherboard is loaded with electrolytic capacitors, so good luck if you get one with dead caps. That'll take forever to replace. This back area has the fan, 40mm. There's also the header for the USB ports. They just loop around and plug into here. And there's also the reset switch, which is actually a nicely mounted push button. After a lot of fighting, I got the motherboard out and I took off the little heatsink. Here you can see the nice VIA Eden ESP5000 Revision E. It just has a little passive heatsink on it. You got your RAM, the motherboard controller, well, platform controller, whatever you want to call it. There's a PCI Edge connector here. I believe this is actually a standard PCI slot. You obviously need a riser or an adapter to switch it back to female, because this won't work with a PCI card. The reset button on the motherboard, or sorry, on the case, actually plugs into a port called Reset to Default. I'm not sure if this is actually software or just clears the CMOS or whatever it does. There's also 2 fan headers on this thing which aren't used. The fan actually plugs into the Crystal Fonts display on the front, which is pretty standard in these types of machines. They often use the Crystal Fonts displays to do all the fan monitoring and whatnot. And yeah, that's it. It's an oddly shaped board. It's about 200mm by like 150mm. The closest thing I can find to what kind of form factor this is like a mini DTX, which I don't think this is. This seems custom to me, so I don't think we can use it in another case or swap out the board. This is the power connector for the motherboard. It's one of those kind of old style things. Certainly no ATX. And yep, there you have it. Just the 2 parallel ATA ports. One goes to the hard drive, and the larger standard one goes to the compact flash reader. The LED panel actually has active components on it, which was a little surprising to me. I thought it would just be some passive LEDs, since there are so many actual connections to the board. Focus. There we go. There's space for 2 more sets of LEDs for 2 more Ethernet ports, so it's consistent that Portwell probably does sell a model using the motherboard that has the full 5 Ethernet jacks populated. The LCD module on the front is a standard Crystal Fonts 633. They're used in a lot of different cases like this. They fit into a 1U case, so they're pretty common. They're powered by a standard floppy drive power connector, and this is the supply for the fan. These have built-in fan controllers. As you can see, there's space for 2 more fans. I'm not sure if this is custom firmware or not. Judging by the sticker, it probably is. So it's unlikely you can just rewrite this and use it for your own needs. I'm going to try it in pfSense and see how it works. By default, this is what the Crystal Fonts display will show. It won't actually change this because the software hasn't kicked on to actually start writing stuff to the screen. With LCD proc installed, you can see that it works just fine under pfSense. One little thing to note is that it doesn't actually know what CPU speed it is, as you can see, but other than that, all the controls work. And the only catch is that you have to edit one of the config files for LCD proc to the correct serial port, because it detects the wrong port name. In conclusion, it makes a half-decent router. I mean, the real limitation on this isn't really the processor speed, because 533, even if it's a slow 533, is more than enough for, like, I think pfSense says it goes up to, like, you can get like 50 megabits. So unless you have a really fast home internet connection, you're pretty much okay with this thing. The only catch is its limitation of 512 megabytes of RAM. I did find a data sheet on it that explains the jumper settings. They're all for stuff like watchdog timers, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it does work great, and the nice little display is cool. I enjoy that, and obviously built-in CF card slot is nice if you're going to run Mono Wall, whatever the hell it's called, or PF Sense. And yeah, if you can get one cheap, I think I paid around $30 for this one. I'd say it's a really, really good entry-level homemade router.